On December 13, the Philippine Coast Guard accused China of deliberately targeting 20 Filipino fishing vessels in a disputed area of the South China Sea, raising tensions in the region. Philippine authorities reported that 3 fishermen were wounded and 2 of the fishing boats suffered significant structural damage as a result of the alleged Chinese actions. The incident reportedly involved Chinese Coast Guard ships firing water cannons at Filipino vessels while maneuvering aggressively around a disputed shoal, according to the Philippine Coast Guard. Nearly 24 Filipino fishing boats were subjected to water cannon attacks and blocking maneuvers by Chinese ships, forcing some boats to cut their anchors and retreat to safety. In addition, the Philippine Coast Guard said that a smaller Chinese vessel physically cut the anchor lines of multiple Filipino boats, creating additional hazards for the fishermen at sea. Statement by Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson read, and I quote, "The Philippine Coast Guard today announced the successful deployment of its multi-role response vessels, MRRV 4403 and MRRV 4411, to the vicinity of Escoda Shoal in the West Philippine Sea to provide critical support to a group of Filipino fishermen who were subjected to harassment by Chinese Coast Guard and Chinese Maritime Militia." On December 12, 2025, the PCG received reports that approximately 20 Filipino fishing boats operating lawfully in the area were targeted with water cannons and dangerous blocking maneuvers by CCG vessels 21559 and 21562 and accompanying CMMs. In a brazen escalation, small CCG rigid-hull inflatable boats deliberately cut the anchor lines of several FFBs, endangering the vessels and their crews amid strong currents and high waves. As a direct result of these aggressive actions, 3 Filipino fishermen sustained physical injuries, including bruises and open wounds. 2 FFBs also suffered significant damage from high-pressure water cannon blasts. En route to rendezvous with the affected fishermen, the PCG vessels encountered repeated blocking and dangerous maneuvers by CCG vessels 21559, 5204, and 21562. One particularly hazardous incident occurred when CCG 23519 approached within 35 yards of a PCG vessel during nighttime navigation. Despite these unprofessional and unlawful interferences, the PCG successfully reached the fishermen this morning and provided immediate medical attention to the injured, along with essential supplies. Currently, MRRV 4403 and MRRV 4411, in coordination with the vessel MV Pamela Kaya, are maintaining close proximity to the group of Filipino fishermen to ensure their security and safety. Fuel, ice, and food provisions have been distributed to sustain their ongoing fishing activities, in line with the government's Kadwa Para sa Bagong Bayaning Mangingisda initiative. The China Coast Guard statement confirming the implementation of necessary control measures against Filipino fishermen constitutes an acknowledgement of actions that endangered the lives and livelihoods of ordinary Filipinos exercising their rightful activities within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. In furtherance of the standing directive of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., the PCG under the leadership of Commandant Admiral Ronnie Gilgavin, the Philippine Coast Guard remains steadfast in its mandate to protect Filipino fishermen and uphold maritime safety in the West Philippine Sea. The PCG calls on the Chinese Coast Guard to adhere to internationally recognized standards of conduct, prioritizing the preservation of life at sea over pretensions of law enforcement that jeopardize the lives of innocent fishermen. Unquote. China refers to the area as Xianbin Reef, while the Philippines calls it the Escoda Shoal, Reuters reported, reflecting competing claims over the same disputed maritime feature. Sabina Shoal lies within the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone, roughly 150 kilometers west of Palawan Province, a key fishing and strategic area for Manila. China claims virtually the entire South China Sea, extending its assertions into the exclusive economic zones of several neighboring countries, including the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. The South China Sea is a critical maritime corridor for international commerce, carrying more than $3 trillion in global trade every year, making disputes in the area especially sensitive. An international arbitral tribunal ruled in 2016 that China's sweeping claims over the South China Sea had no legal basis, affirming the maritime rights of the Philippines under international law. Beijing has consistently rejected the tribunal's ruling and continues to assert de facto control over much of the contested waters, maintaining a heavy maritime presence in the area. The latest confrontation highlights the growing dangers faced by fishermen and other civilians operating in contested maritime zones, where tensions between major powers can quickly escalate into violent encounters.